Good morning. This is Peter McLaughlin Cox. All glory to God. It is January the 29th, 2025, and I have a follow-up report on the Cascadia earthquake prophecy. I will begin with a dream I had on January the 17th, 2025. In this dream, I see a judge with no robe. He's not wearing a robe, like the typical black robe, but he is dressed in a white shirt. He sits behind the bench and rolls up the sleeves of his white shirt. He strikes down on the gavel and says something very peculiar. He says, as he strikes the gavel, the judge says, a rooster will have the final say. Wow. When I wrote this down in my notebook after the dream, I was drawn back almost 30 years ago in my memory to the very first time I came out to Vancouver. And I went into Vancouver with my dear friend and minister, Holly Rodham, and we were going to a meeting with a vineyard pastor who was the leader of the March for Jesus organization, and we were meeting as part of the organizing the March for Jesus, and this was in April 1995. While I was there at this meeting, I had a vision of a rooster that was superimposed over the city of Vancouver. And I spoke that vision at the meeting and discussed that. The sense I had back then, almost 30 years ago, that this was all about judgment. It was a wake-up call, and it was about judgment. That rooster superimposed over the city of Vancouver. So that's almost 30 years ago. And now on January the 17th, 2025, I have this judge sitting down, striking the gavel, and saying, a rooster will have the final say. Now, this got confirmed on January the 20th. This aspect of the rooster and the judgment was confirmed amazingly on January the 20th. We have a gym on the main floor of this building that we live in, and I've been spending a lot of time in that gym lately. I would say 4 or 5 times a week, every week for the past 3-4 months. When I'm in the gym, I have never met anybody else in that gym. And when I walk by that gym to go out the main entrance, I have never noticed anybody inside that gym. So it's like this gym has become my own personal private gym. So on January the 20th, I'm in there doing my routine, and I hear a key in the door, and somebody comes in. The very first person I've seen in that gym while I was there. He's dressed very heavily, layers of clothing. It's been very cold here in the Edmonton area during that time. And he starts to peel off the layers. He's a young Asian man, and he's wearing a toque and a couple of hoodies, that type of thing. And he's got his phone, and he's talking on the phone, and he's talking to what is, I believe, his either his girlfriend or his young wife. He goes over to the wall, a couple of hangers there, and he props the phone up on the hanger, and he begins a very lighthearted, um, not with very heavy weights, but he begins to move these dumbbells around, and he's having this conversation with this young woman on the phone. I can see the phone very clearly. I can see her face, and I can hear the conversation from where I am stationed. And what I hear in the background of the cell phone, I begin to hear the crowing of a rooster. I remarked to the young man, I asked him, I said, "Is that a rooster in the background of the cell phone?" And he doesn't respond to me because I was thinking maybe there was a bit of a language barrier there or something to that effect. He didn't respond to that. Again, I hear a rooster call. And again, I've heard this several times. I'm not about to say it was 3 times. Since my name is Peter, I wasn't going to hear a rooster crow 3 times. But this rooster, very definitely a rooster crowing in the background. So of this cell phone. So I was totally amazed. Who sent that young man? And why did he have this cell phone? And why was a rooster crowing in the background? I was totally amazed. And I immediately accepted that as a confirmation of what I had seen in the dream and what I had seen even almost 30 years ago over the city of Vancouver. So there's a judgment aspect to all of this that's taking place. And then also on January 20th, I began to get some revelation, further revelation on the Cascadia prophecy, and I began to see how my dream of the judge and the rooster was tying into the Cascadia prophecy. And then more particularly, at this stage on January the 20th, I seem to be more focused and more concerned on the volcanoes than I am on the earthquake, the major earthquake that comes off of the Cascadia fault. But I am more focused at this time on the volcanoes. Um, and at one point, um, with this, not on January the 20th, but prior to that, I was hearing the number 5. And that was in response to like a mental question, a mental probing, if you like. For some reason, I was not focused on one volcano, but I was wondering if there was more than one volcano. So I was asking that question, and I heard the number 5. I'm not saying that I heard clearly, and the Lord was telling me that there would be 5 separate but simultaneous volcanic eruptions relative to this whole Cascadia event. So I was concerned about this, but I am not sure that it would be 5. But I believe very firmly that there's going to be more than one volcanic eruption, and possibly as many as 5, which would be astounding for sure. But I need to confirm this. So if I go over the volcanoes, I want to start from So they start in northern California and come all the way up to Vancouver. And so I wanted to go through the list here for a moment. So we have Lawson Peak, and we have Mount Shasta in Northern California. We have Crater Lake, Three Sisters, Mount Jefferson, and Mount Hood in Oregon. Then we have Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, which most people have heard about, Mount Rainier, Glacier Peak, and Mount Baker up in Washington. Then we have Mount Garibaldi and Mount Mar in BC. And these are all part of the Cascadia Range, and these are all recognized as volcanic mountains. While I was making this list in my book, I underlined Mount Rainier, and I underlined Mount Baker. And then for some reason, my attention was drawn to Mount Baker. Previously, many years ago, I had revelation concerning Mount Rainier. I actually had a vision where I saw Mount Rainier exploding. And I was young in my journey with the Lord, and especially in my prophetic journey. So I kind of went maybe a little heavy on that. And I remember somebody telling me recently that, well, you had this vision of Mount Rainier exploding, and it hasn't exploded. So they were bringing the validity of that vision from many years ago, back, I would say 1996, even that far back. They were bringing the validity of that vision into question, which is fine. So I've already seen Mount Rainier, and that's why I underlined it on this list of volcanoes here. But then my focus became Mount Baker. And this gets interesting, right? Because I saw Mount Baker and I started to ponder Mount Baker. And then my memory was drawn all the way back to when I was a little kid going to Saturday afternoon matinees back in Nova Scotia, where we would dress up in our with cowboy hats and shirts, and have our pistols and holsters on, and we'd go to the Saturday afternoon matinee. I remember this because at intermission of the matinee, they would have these quick draw contests, and so I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm just so my memory was emphasizing this thing about cowboys and little boys being interested in cowboys and holsters and guns and that type of thing. And then my memory was drawn to an uncle I had back then. And the cool thing for a little boy to have this uncle was that he was the sheriff of Yarmouth County. I'm not sure. I don't ever recall meeting Sheriff Jack Baker, but that was his name, Jack Baker. So I'm connecting this now with Mount Baker, and so that's a sign. Jack Baker was the sheriff of Yarmouth County. And one of the things that Jack Baker did, because of his wife, who apparently had passed away, and her name was very similar to my younger sister's. So this Jack Baker, the sheriff, would send silver as a gift to my little sister every Christmas, and I think every birthday. Silver spoons, silver forks, silver knives. So eventually, over the years, this would amount to quite a collection of silver that would likely be quite valuable for my sister. So I'm making this connection to another aspect of the silver, because it was Jack Baker who sent the silver to my sister. There's a psalm that keeps part of a psalm, a passage from Psalm 12, that keeps popping up in a book that I have recently written. And that passage goes like this. It says, the word of the Lord is flawless, like silver baked in an oven of clay, baked, underlined baked, as in baker, like silver baked in an oven of clay, purified 7 times. So there I now have another confirmation. And then on January the 22nd, as a confirmation, my friend and colleague Sean was watching a movie called Back in Action. And in this movie, the characters changed their names to Mr. and Mrs. Baker. And he describes to me that in this movie, in one scene, Mr. and Mrs. Baker are on a plane that crashes on top of a mountain. There's another confirmation. So at this point, it appears I have 2 mountain subjects in the Cascades, Mount Rainier and Mount Baker. Now, further to that, on January the 25th, on the subject of volcanoes, I'm asking the Lord about the number 5, because this is very important to me. If there's going to be 5 volcanic eruptions, and the Lord is giving me these prophetic words and these prophetic images, I need to ask him, I need to confirm him further. So I'm not saying I have absolute proof now of this, but on the subject of volcanoes and the number 5, I'm asking him this. I'm waiting for my wife to come out of a store. I'm in the truck, and I look at the door in front of me in the parking lot, and I see the number 5. No big deal. You can see number 5s on doors all day long. So that's not like a very powerful sign. But the next thing, I hear take 5. Now I must wait for the confirmation on that. But I'll just leave that with you, because I heard take 5 in my head. So the title of that piece is Take 5. So I thought that was kind of cool. So still, I'm not sure of 5 volcanic events, but I am sure of Mount Baker, and I am confident of Mount Rainier, and I'm becoming more and more curious and confident that there could be as many as 5, which would be absolutely astounding. This could be a mega event, which the Lord is describing as a judgment issue, and also a wake-up call. So I'll leave that with you. One thing I need to say on closing, I thank you for your interest. I thank you for your time. And I want to leave you with this word, that those who call on the name of the Lord will be saved. Amen. Thank you very much. Bye for now.